Every civilization that inhabited the coasts knew a singular truth. There existed a force beyond human comprehension governing the waters. The Greeks called this force Poseidon. But here lies what Western history chose to conceal. Poseidon was never merely a mythological deity. He was the embodiment of something far darker, far more tangible, and infinitely more disturbing than any historical record has ever admitted. When you understand who Poseidon truly was, when you examine the evidence buried within ancient texts and archaeological records, classical Greek civilization ceases to make sense. Because Poseidon wasn't simply worshipped by the Greeks, he was feared. And that distinction reshapes everything you believed about the origins of Western mythology. For the last 2,500 years, we've been taught a simplified narrative. Poseidon appears as one of the 12 Olympians, controlling seas and earthquakes with divine authority. But scrutinize the original records more carefully, and the fear surrounding the god of the ocean was visceral, concrete, undeniable. Sailors performed sacrifices before voyages, not seeking blessing, but survival. Because Poseidon represented something far more primal than other gods: absolute fury, infinite power, and incomprehensible mystery that transcended rational explanation. Where did this god originate? This question haunts scholars even today. Poseidon's roots predate classical Greece entirely. Found in Linear B tablets, the oldest known Greek writing system, as Poseidon, he was venerated by peoples whose existence depended upon maritime mastery and whose struggle against natural phenomena continues to defy logical explanation even today. These weren't abstract religious concepts. These were concrete responses to observable reality. The evidence suggests something remarkable. Multiple, geographically isolated Mediterranean civilizations with no contact between them described nearly identical deities associated with the sea. This consistency isn't coincidence. It's a pattern. It's a signature. And signatures point toward truth. His trident, that signature symbol appearing in countless depictions, emerges across pre-Greek cultures with startling regularity. Throughout the ancient Mediterranean, geographically isolated civilizations independently described a king of the waters possessing destructive and regenerative power beyond measure. The trident was far more than an instrument of fishing or warfare. It was the insignia of absolute dominion and supernatural authority, a symbol recognized and feared across cultures that had no documented contact with one another. The cult surrounding Poseidon ran profoundly deep through Greek society. Sacrifices were cast into the sea with meticulous ritual precision. Exclusive ceremonies unfolded along shorelines during tempestuous nights, desperate pleas for mercy echoing across the darkness. But observe the pattern. These weren't spontaneous acts of devotion. They were systematic, calendrical, aligned with specific seasonal phenomena. The Greeks were following a protocol, not of casual worship, but of systematic appeasement. They were negotiating with something they fundamentally feared. Consider the nature of these offerings more carefully. While Zeus received the finest portions of sacrificial animals, burned on elevated altars with ceremony and fanfare, Poseidon received different tributes. Objects were deliberately cast into the ocean's depths, never to be recovered. Valuables disappeared into waters beyond reach. Prisoners sometimes vanished into the sea during nighttime rituals that contemporary historians rarely discuss openly. What were the ancients truly attempting to accomplish through these practices? Creatures bearing Poseidon's bloodline reveal the disturbing nature of his legacy. The Minotaur, that infamous hybrid of man and beast, was his offspring. The Cyclops, Polyphemus, whose intelligence surpassed typical animal consciousness, was his son. Pegasus, that impossible winged horse, emerged from his union with Medusa. These were not simple monsters conjured from imagination. They were described with anatomical specificity, behavioral consistency, and genealogical precision by multiple ancient sources. And then there were the lesser creatures, dozens of them. Centaurs exhibiting human-level reasoning, sirens demonstrating language and strategy, tritons performing complex tasks requiring intelligence and planning. These entities consistently appeared in Poseidon's realm, the waters and coastlines under his dominion. What if the ancient Greeks were describing not fantastical inventions, but actual populations existing outside their cultural sphere? Peoples so distinct, so different from mainland Greeks that the only language available to describe them was mythological. The pursuit of Odysseus stands as the most revealing episode in all Greek mythology. When Odysseus blinded Polyphemus, he didn't simply commit an act of violence. He mutilated a semi-divine being, a creature of Poseidon's direct lineage. And Poseidon's response transcended typical divine punishment. It wasn't proportional. It wasn't merciful. It was calculated, methodical, relentless vindication. For 10 years, an entire decade, Poseidon maintained his vendetta against a single mortal. He didn't simply drown Odysseus. That would have been merciful. Instead, he created tempests where none should exist. He conjured sea creatures to menace his vessels. He obstructed every direct path homeward with supernatural hostility. He orchestrated a campaign of psychological torment spanning years. This wasn't justice. This was vendetta. This was personal rage.
What does this tell us? Poseidon possessed memory. He harbored grudges. He executed long-term strategic plans. He demonstrated emotional complexity that transcended simple divine authority. These aren't characteristics of abstract mythological symbols. These are characteristics of entities capable of reasoned thought, emotional investment, and deliberate action across extended time frames. The architectural mysteries deepen the enigma further. Ancient texts describe Poseidon constructing elaborate structures beneath the waves, palaces of extraordinary sophistication, gardens cultivated in the ocean's depths, infrastructure that required engineering knowledge and organizational capability. These descriptions appear across multiple independent sources with consistent details. The specificity is remarkable. The repetition is undeniable. Accounts describe underwater cities, not metaphorical representations, but literal populated settlements beneath the ocean's surface. Atlantis occupies the most famous position in Western consciousness, but Plato wasn't the only ancient writer describing submerged civilizations. Greek, Phoenician, and Egyptian sources all reference similar phenomena. Different names, different locations, but identical structural descriptions, identical technological sophistication, identical connection to Poseidon. We've explored less than 5% of Earth's oceans. The deepest trenches remain virtually unknown to human science. Entire ecosystems exist in complete darkness, under pressures that would instantly annihilate human biology. Creatures living kilometers beneath the surface possess adaptations so extreme that they seem almost alien. What else thrives in those unexplored depths? What civilizations might exist in environments humans barely can access? The ritual practices surrounding Poseidon worship suggest knowledge of natural phenomena that ancient peoples shouldn't have possessed. Offerings increased precisely before tsunami events. Sacrifices intensified ahead of major earthquakes. Prayers and ceremonies aligned with observable pressure systems in ways suggesting predictive capability. Had the ancients discovered methods of detecting seismic activity through generations of accumulated observation? Had they developed understanding of natural warning signs that modern science is only now rediscovering? Consider the symbolism embedded within Poseidon's mythology. The trident itself, a weapon with 3 prongs. 3 holds tremendous symbolic weight across ancient cultures. The holy trinity of power, the 3 worlds, sky, earth, water. 3 as a number of completion and cosmic balance. The trident wasn't arbitrary, it encoded meaning. It transmitted information across generations through visual language that transcended written words. Poseidon's horses deserve particular attention. The god was uniquely associated with equine creatures. He was credited with creating the horse. He taught humanity to ride. Yet horses are land animals, fundamentally unsuited to ocean environments. Why would the god of the sea obsess over terrestrial creatures? Unless Poseidon represented something broader than water alone, unless he embodied a power that transcended environmental boundaries. Perhaps he represented a civilization that mastered both maritime and terrestrial domains, a culture sophisticated enough to breed horses, navigate oceans, and construct underwater infrastructure. The genealogy of Poseidon reveals additional disturbances. His father, Cronus, was a titan who devoured his own children. Poseidon survived this predation through his siblings' intervention. He then participated in the violent overthrow of the Titans, the Titanomachia. This wasn't divine succession, this was generational conflict. This was violent revolution against established authority. The winners, the Olympians, divided dominion geographically and strategically. Zeus claimed the sky, Hades received the underworld. Poseidon was relegated to the waters, separated from his siblings, confined to an isolated realm, governing an empire beyond direct observation. Is it any wonder his mythology emphasizes isolation, fury, and vindictive behavior? Ancient mariners approached ocean voyages with ritualistic precision. Before departure, they made offerings specifically to Poseidon. During voyages, they performed continuous ceremonies. Upon safe arrival, they offered gratitude at coastal temples. This wasn't casual religiosity. This was systematic risk management through supernatural negotiation. The Greeks were attempting to influence a power they recognized as fundamentally dangerous and potentially capricious. The festivals honoring Poseidon, particularly the Isthmian Games, contained elements that conventional historians rarely emphasize. Yes, athletic competitions occurred, but secretive rituals unfolded during night hours. Participants engaged in ceremonies not documented in public records. Some individuals who entered these rituals simply disappeared from historical records. What transpired during these exclusive ceremonies? What happened to those who vanished? Modern archaeology continues discovering submerged structures in Mediterranean locations precisely where ancient texts claimed Poseidon's domains extended. These aren't natural formations. They exhibit clear evidence of intentional construction, geometric precision, architectural planning, engineering sophistication matching or exceeding contemporary surface civilizations. Yet mainstream scholarship hesitates to acknowledge their significance or their connection to ancient mythology. The deeper you examine Poseidon, the less he resembles abstract mythology, and the more he appears to represent encoded historical memory. A memory of something real, something powerful, something that inspired genuine fear across multiple cultures. A memory preserved through religious ritual, mythological narrative, and cultural practice, because humans recognized the importance of maintaining that remembrance across generations. Perhaps Poseidon wasn't created by Greek imagination. Perhaps he was inherited from earlier civilizations. Perhaps he represents a truth so fundamental, so undeniable, that even after millennia, cultures continue venerating his memory through renamed deities and transformed rituals. The Phoenicians worshipped similar entities. Later Mediterranean cultures maintained comparable traditions. The symbols persist, the rituals evolve but remain recognizable. The fear endures. Poseidon wasn't simply a product of poetic imagination. He was ancestral memory encoded through religious practice. He was humanity's attempt to comprehend and communicate with forces exceeding our understanding. He was reverence directed toward genuine power. He was fear distilled into narrative, ritual, and cultural transmission. And perhaps, just perhaps, that's precisely why we should continue taking Poseidon seriously. Not as mythology, not as ancient superstition, but as historical memory, as evidence of something real that ancient peoples recognized, respected, and feared enough to ensure their descendants never forgot. The oceans remain largely unexplored. The depths keep their secrets. And somewhere in that darkness, perhaps, the truth awaits discovery by those brave enough to dive deeper into mystery.